Dear students, welcome to UGC EPG Patashala on Human Rights and Duties. My name is Professor Y.S.R. Murthy. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Human Rights Studies, OP Jindal Global University. In this unit on national mechanisms for protection and enforcement of human rights, we will take up the module relating to the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 today. In the earlier modules, we have discussed the National Human Rights Protection System, the role of legislature, executive, judiciary, and in the last module, we saw the Paris Principles and how these Paris Principles are critical to the effective functioning of national human rights institutions across the world. In fact, every National Human Rights Commission should be founded on these 6 principles which say or which talk about wide mandate to the Commission, also independence, autonomy, pluralism, adequate resources, adequate investigative powers. And in this module, let us see how the Paris Principles have been translated into the Indian context and whether the Protection of Human Rights Act has been able to comply with the Paris Principles or not, what are the main elements of this act, and in what historical context in which this act was adopted, and the main provisions of this legislation. And as you know, the Constitution under Part 3 stipulates a number of fundamental rights which accrue to every person. And in Part 4 of the Constitution, a number of directive principles have been laid down, and all of them relate to human rights, and these are being protected by the higher judiciary under Article 32 of the Constitution of India or under Article 226 by the High Courts. And today, we will see a specialized institution, that is National Human Rights Commission, which has been established under the Protection of Human Rights Act. And before we go and before we take up the National Human Rights Commission, we will first look at the founding legislation of this commission. At the end of this module, you will have sufficient knowledge about the nature of national and state human rights commissions, and you will also understand the historical context in which the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 was formulated and was enacted by the Parliament of India, and you will appreciate the basic features of the Protection of Human Rights Act and understand its true role and significance and also the relevant concepts. You will have a knowledge about the provisions of the Act in relation to their compliance with the Paris Principles, and we have seen what these Paris Principles are in the last module. Let us understand the historical context in which the Protection of Human Rights Act was adopted by the Parliament. A need was felt for a domestic institution to perform the function of protection and promotion of human rights. It was gaining significance the world over. And in fact, if you see in 1991, there was an international conference organized by the UN Human Rights Commission, and the Paris Principles were adopted in the year 1993. And these developments triggered the need for formation of NHRIs at the national level. Criticism, both within the country and abroad, about the human rights violations which had been occurring in Jammu and Kashmir and Northeast, Andhra Pradesh at the hands of paramilitary forces, and there were demands for accountability for these violations. And in this context, the Parliament enacted the Protection of Human Rights Act. In addition to these developments, there was also a strong yearning from the Indian civil society for a national human rights institution. Of course, the courts both the Supreme Court and the high courts have been protecting fundamental rights ever since the adoption of the Constitution of India, but a need was felt for a specialized institution which can give a faster redress to victims of human rights violations. And initially, the government brought out an ordinance which was subsequently replaced by the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, and under this, the National Human Rights Commission was established on 12th October 1993. And if you look at the Act, it is divided into 8 chapters and 43 sections, and these sections cover preamble, and then they talk about the composition of the Commission, powers of the Commission, and what should be the procedure for inquiry, and the steps after inquiry, and how the army ought to be dealt with, and the state human rights commissions, human rights courts, finance, accounts, and audit. All these have been described in various sections of the Act. And right in the beginning, the preamble captures the spirit of this legislation. It says the National Human Rights Commission should be established, State Human Rights Commission should be established in states, and the Human Rights Court should be established for quote unquote better protection and promotion of human rights. Before 1993, this function was being performed by the higher judiciary, and a need was felt for a specialized institution for a better protection of human rights. And if you look at Section 2D of the Act, it defines human rights. And the human rights, according to the Protection of Human Rights Act, mean the rights relating to life, liberty, equality, and dignity of the individual, which are guaranteed by the Constitution of India, are embodied in the international covenants and enforceable by courts in India. These international covenants have been further defined as International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, and such other covenants and conventions which are adopted by the India and which have been notified by the Government of India. And Commission shall have the 9 members. These include chairperson, 4 regular members, and 4 deemed members. For instance, the chairperson of the National Commission for Minorities, National Commission for Women, National Commission for Scheduled Caste, and National Commission for Scheduled Tribe are supposed to work as deemed members of the Commission. These, together with 5 other members, will constitute in all 9 members of the Commission. And the Protection of Human Rights Act requires that the chairperson of the Commission shall be a former Chief Justice of India, and one member has to be a former Judge of the Supreme Court of India, and one member shall be a former Chief Justice of a High Court. And if you look at out of the 5 members who are the core members, the 3 are drawn from higher judiciary, and they are supposed to know human rights, and they are supposed to have expert knowledge of the human rights. And the Act also specifies the mode of appointment and removal of the chairperson and members. The appointment of the chairperson shall be done by a high power committee, which comprising of political parties on either side, and this high level body is headed by the Prime Minister of India, and there is a Speaker of the Lok Sabha, and then Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha, and leaders of opposition from both houses, and the Union Home Minister shall be members of this high power body, and it's supposed to be a politically neutral body, and which selects the chairperson and members of the commission. And the chairperson can hold office for a term of 5 years or 70 years, whichever is earlier, and a member can hold office for a term of 5 years, and he can, in the case of members, they can go for a second tenure, but they shall hold office till the age of 70 years. And the Act, if one looks at carefully, it has a clear provisions for the removal of members, and it shall be they can be removed by a procedure which is more or less similar to removal of judges. In other words, it has been made so stringent, and in order to vest the commission with sufficient independence, with sufficient moral credibility, moral strength, so that it can deal with violations of human rights in an effective manner. So the very presence of 3 members who are drawn from higher judiciary, and then the manner of their appointment, the manner of their removal are so drafted to vest the commission with the necessary independence and necessary strength in order to function as an effective body. What are the functions of the commission? These have been mentioned in Section 12 of the Protection of Human Rights Act. The Commission shall inquire into a complaint of human rights violation against a public servant, and it can be done either suo moto or on the basis of a petition. And Commission can also intervene in a pending proceeding in a court of law about a human rights violation with the permission of that court. And the Commission is required to visit jails, mental hospitals, and such other institutions where persons are detained or lodged for treatment or reformation. And the National Human Rights Commission is also required to review the constitutional safeguards and other safeguards in laws for protection of human rights and make recommendations from time to time. And the Commission is required to review the factors that impede the enjoyment of human rights and make recommendations thereon. Section 12 also requires NHRC to review and recommend for effective implementation of international instruments on human rights, and Commission is required to undertake research either by itself or promote research through other bodies in the field of human rights. National Human Rights Commission is required to walk on many legs. On the one hand, you have complaints, you have intervention in court proceedings, review of laws, international conventions, and make recommendations, and then visit jails, mental hospitals, and then spread human rights literacy and awareness, and encourage the efforts of non-governmental organizations. These broadly come under 2 categories. One is that of promotion, the other is that of protection. The protection requires redressal of individual complaints, intervention in court proceedings. On the other hand, the promotional role is through undertaking research, encouraging the efforts of non-governmental organizations, spreading human rights literacy and awareness through seminars, conferences, publications, media, etc. So, the Commission walks on both these twin legs of protection as well as promotion. In order to perform this wide range of functions, the Commission also has been entrusted with certain powers. Insofar as individual complaints of human rights violations committed by public servants, both acts of commission as well as omission is concerned, NHRC shall have the powers of a civil court inquiring into complaints under Section 12A, like they can summon and enforce the attendance of witnesses, they can compel production of a document, and just as a civil court has it, they can record evidence, examine witnesses and documents, and they can also demand production of any public copy from any court or a public office, and they can compel any person to furnish information under this Section 13 of the Protection of Human Rights Act. NHRC can enter any building where it believes that a document relating to the inquiry can be found, and the NHRC has also been empowered to transfer complaints to a state Human Rights Commission under certain circumstances. Now, let us turn our attention to the inquiry into individual complaints. Section 17 of the Protection of Human Rights Act, the Commission can call for a report from the state government or the central government or any other concerned authority. Once the report is received, it may either accept the report, or if it may ask for additional information, or have an investigation conducted by itself, and after ascertaining all facts, the Commission can take a number of steps. In fact, Section 18 of the Protection of Human Rights Act outlines certain steps during and after inquiry, and which are given in the legislation, and it can award immediate interim relief, or it can recommend prosecution of those who have committed human rights violations. Section 19 of the Protection of Human Rights Act has a slightly different procedure with regard to violations committed by personnel of armed forces, while the NHRC can investigate complaints of human rights violations committed by police personnel. Insofar as violations committed by armed forces are concerned, it can at best seek a report from the authorities concerned, but it cannot investigate violations committed by army by itself. Under Section 20 of the Protection of Human Rights Act, National Human Rights Commission or the State Human Rights Commission shall submit annual reports or other special reports, and the central government or the state government, as the case may be, are supposed to lay before each House of Parliament or the state legislature respectively. This provision is important for many reasons. The Protection of Human Rights Act requires that the central government shall place before the Parliament the annual reports or special reports submitted by the Commission, along with an action taken report. In a way, it enforces the accountability of the executive. In fact, when the members of Parliament have a report containing the recommendations of the Commission on the one hand, along with the action taken report, the action taken report is required to specify whether the government has accepted the recommendations of the Commission, and in case it has not accepted, the reasons for not accepting a particular recommendations. When members of Parliament peruse these documents, they can in turn ask questions as to why certain recommendations of the Commission are not accepted by the central government, or in the case of State Human Rights Commission, by the state government concerned, and this helps in holding the executive accountable for its function of protection of and promotion of human rights. Let us turn our attention to the State Human Rights Commissions, and Section 21 onwards in the PHRA talk about State Human Rights Commissions and the manner of their constitution by the state government for inquiring into violation of human rights related to matters provided in List 2, which is a state list, and List 3, which is a concurrent list on the 7th schedule of the Constitution. And the State Human Rights Commission shall have the following members for a term of 5 years or the age of 17 years, whichever is earlier. It shall have a chairperson who has been a former Chief Justice of a High Court. There are other members, and the State Human Rights Commissions are required to submit annual reports to the state government, and such report are required to be laid down before the Legislative Assembly along with an action taken report. Now, let's turn our attention to the human rights courts, which have already been discussed in an earlier module in full detail. Section 30 of the Protection of Human Rights Act specifies the manner of constitution of this human rights court. The state government has a power to specify a court of session to be a human rights court for speedy trial of offences arising out of violation of human rights. It's not compulsory for the government to establish human rights courts in each district, but what has been provided in the Act is only an enabling measure. In fact, in NHRC in the year 1998 drew attention to the ambiguity of the functioning of these courts. In fact, the Commission made a number of amendments to Section 30, but so far no steps have been taken to redress this gap, and the Commission's recommendations are still out there. Now, let's turn to the finance and audit. For effective functioning of any commission, the finance is extremely important, and the Act says that the commission shall be financed by the government in accordance with the grants approved under the Appropriation Act of the Parliament, and the National Human Rights Commission can spend that amount in the manner if it wants, and to further the protection and promotion of human rights, and as it deems fit. And so this is an important provision where the Commission has been given autonomy and independence to spend that money for the purposes for which it has been created. And the National Human Rights Commission as well as State Human Rights Commissions are required to maintain their proper accounts of finance and expenditure, and these are annually audited by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Now, let's see how the Protection of Human Rights Act complies with the Paris Principles. We have seen the provisions of the Protection of Human Rights Act. Now, the issue arises, do they comply with the Paris Principles? Because these Paris Principles, as we have seen in the last module, are supposed to be the foundation upon which all NHRIs across the world should function. In fact, these Paris Principles serve as the minimum standards that all NHRIs should meet, and every domestic institution, in order to be considered as credible and effective at the international level, should comply with these 6 basic minimum standards relating to broad mandate, autonomy, independence, pluralism, and adequate resources and adequate powers of investigation. Let us see how the Indian legislation complies with the Paris Principles. Broad mandate. For instance, there have been certain models across the world where certain human rights commissions in Europe or other countries can only look at the promotional role. They do not have the protection role. Some of them serve as equal opportunities commissions. On the other hand, the National Human Rights Commission of India, under the Protection of Human Rights Act, can look at the full range of civil, political, as well as economic, social, cultural rights. So, in other words, it enjoys a wide mandate, and it also has been vested with the sufficient autonomy and independence. We have seen how the manner of appointment or removal of members have been so drafted to ensure the independence of the Commission, and in fact the funding is also made in such a manner that the demands for grants are voted by the Parliament of India, and they do not depend on the whims and fancies of the government of the day. And in other words, there is a great lot of functional as well as financial autonomy and independence which has been provided in the Protection of Human Rights Act. And what about the pluralism? Let us look at the composition of the Commission. It is supposed to have a chairperson, 4 members, and in addition, there are 4 members who are part of the Commission as deemed members. For instance, in addition to these chairperson and 4 members who are regular members, the chairpersons of the National Commission for Women, the National Commission for Minorities, the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes are supposed to be a part of the commission as deemed members. The presence of these deemed members brings certain vitality, certain pluralism to the functioning of the commission, because they represent the categories of women, minorities, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And as we have seen in the Protection of Human Rights Act, it provides for a separate investigation wing headed by the Director General of Police. And so there are many commissions at the national level, but some of the commissions do not have investigative powers. On the other hand, the National Human Rights Commission has been vested with the investigation wing, and which is headed by a very senior police officer of the rank of Director General of Investigation, which can do fact finding at the ground level, and it is also vested with adequate resources. So in other words, one finds that there is a broad conformity with the Paris principles by the Protection of Human Rights Act. Of course, the non-governmental organizations believe that the compliance can be little better than what it is now, and they want certain amendments in the Protection of Human Rights Act so that there is a greater adherence to the Paris principles. And in conclusion, the Protection of Human Rights Act, which was adopted in 1993, provides for the setting up of a National Human Rights Commission at the national level, and there is an enabling provision for setting up of state human rights commissions in states. Over 24 states have set up state human rights commissions so far, and the Protection of Human Rights Act also provides for setting up of human rights courts, and in the preamble talks about setting up of these institutions for better protection of human rights. The structure, composition, functions, powers have been so outlined to give it a great authority to the Commission so that it can effectively discharge the task of protection and promotion of human rights in the country. Thank you.